Hello, T. What's going on? Hello, Robert. Been a while. I'm just hanging out on this Saturday night. Thought I'd share my space in the world with anybody that wanted to join me. Thinking about going to bed. It's not necessarily the night for fighting, but it's all right for fighting. It's an acceptable night. He doesn't delineate which ones are not, but I went to bed last night at some point, and apparently, at least at some point this morning, I decided to sleep. I slept later than I've slept in, I don't know, months. I think I often sleep better, at least it seems that way, in the hours before I wake up, as opposed to right after I go to sleep or in the middle of the night. Hard to say, really, but yeah, when I woke up this morning, it was, I don't remember what time it was. It was like 9:40. I never sleep that late. And I think I was woken up at that point, Marcy milling about. I'm usually up before she leaves, and she almost always leaves before 8. Yeah, I suppose you sleep when you need to sleep, but I don't like sleeping in. I feel like when I wake up after having slept later than I want to, I'm, if that's the word for it, that's what I am too, T. I think probably mine's more, I don't know, I wake up, mine's like this, just kind of all night I feel myself being woken up or waking up for various reasons. Yeah, I always feel run down if I sleep late. I used to be a night person. I'm definitely not that anymore. I'm almost always in bed close to 10 o'clock. Rarely do I stay up much later than that. Sometimes I go to bed 8:30, 9 o'clock. I just found some guy on YouTube. I can't remember his name. He's got a big long name. He got maybe, I don't know, he's got videos that go back several years. But recently Like it seems like he's started putting stuff out regularly in the last month and a half or so. He's got maybe a dozen videos up. He's I don't even know enough about him to say what he is. He works in the field of AI safety. Like he explores the kinds of things that we need to be looking at as far as catastrophic results and things like that. Really smart guy. I watched a guy do an interview with him. The guy that interviewed him is a Stanford professor, lecturer, something like that. And he without trying, he made that guy seem like he just was dumb, which I know he's not. I used to be a night owl. I used to be one of them 2, 3 o'clock in the morning kind of. Even fairly recently, sometimes I'd have to be at work or get up and go to work 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, find myself awake at 1 and 2 at night. But that guy was really interesting. I'm going to watch some more of his videos. Old Joe. These cats, man. I don't. If I remember, I'll tag you in a comment or something like that. It was interesting, some of the things he was talking about. This guy was asking him questions like, what can we do to prepare and that kind of thing. He was saying it's a very weird scenario that we find ourselves in, because schools or governments or whoever will say, okay, they'll define a problem, and that'll take committee after committee, etc. And then they'll meet in committees and go over the possibilities and more committees and come up with a planning commission and do this and do that and finally release a paper or a judgment call about whatever it is. He goes, by that time in AI, you're 3 or 4 iterations down the road. He goes, it's just happening too fast for anybody to keep up with. He goes, me, and this is like my very specialized field that I work in, it's impossible for me to keep up with the literature. I think up to this point, as far as AI goes, I haven't been one to very much quote unquote worry about it. I don't think that'll change, but he kind of opened my eyes to some things I hadn't thought about for sure. What are you specifically worried about, if you can narrow it down? This guy talked about the heads of AI companies and stuff like that. Yeah, that's one they actually spoke about. I think for most people on the planet, or most people that are even interested or are remotely aware of the capabilities and potentialities of AI, they understand such a small and often niche as far as it relates to their particular concerns, like not using you as an example, but art or coding or whatever it may be. That they're very focused on a tree and they don't see the forest at all. You just need to get, yeah, the um, what's the word I'm looking for? Generational understanding, especially across, you know, 40, 50 years like that. Somebody that's 80 very likely has a minimal understanding of even like the internet. And in some ways they're better off for it. I mean, don't really have to worry about it unless they worry about their children, children's children, things like that. But that guy talked about art in particular. He said, yeah, hello, Charlie. He said when AI and stuff like that first came out, people were reluctant to give it any weight. It's like, yeah, whatever. It's, it's a chat bot or something like that. Because one of the first things they pointed to as potential, yeah. But one of the first things that they pointed to was like, well, like art. Art is specifically a human thing. AI will never figure that out, and it's one of the first things it figured out. It's like, okay, yeah, graphic design. They specifically talked about graphic design, logos, whatever. And there was a guy in the YTPC um, came up with some new venture, and somebody created a logo for him, and he was just like, oh, this is great, so much work he put into this and blah blah blah. And I looked at it, and I played with AI at that point a fair amount, and it was obvious to me that it was just one of those like Canva or something like that. You put a couple of prompts in, it comes up with something. You tweak this here, you tweak that there. Yeah, most people that need a logo, I mean, why pay for it? That can be expensive. Then he talked about something else. I can't remember what it was. He's like, oh, well, it'll never figure this out. That was like the next thing it conquered. Music's already being inundated with it. it's still, yeah, music may be next. It's not quite there yet. I can, sometimes people send me songs or something. Check this out. I'm like, that is AI. You can just tell it has this, um, I don't know, it has this artificial kind of quality to it. It's like, as good as it may be, I can, at least so far, can still tell that it's when something's AI or not as far as music goes. But I mean, in the world of music, yeah, it's gotten very precise at what it does. Um, but like music, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever, 90s even, the thing that made it, one of the things that made it interesting was the human quality of it, in that it was not perfect. I mean, you can hear the rhythm change, and you can hear little quirks and things like that. And then now, when people make music using quantization and all those music programs to record with and stuff like that, you can make it just so exact, and you can hear it. You can hear a difference between that and a real drummer. And I think AI probably, I don't know, unless somebody gets in there and messes with it, probably is more likely to sound like the modern stuff than the old stuff. So yeah, it's it's amazing what you can do with it. Yeah, there's been a few bands that have come out that gained, internet popularity and a lot of scrutiny because of it, that were obviously AI and just blew up. I mean, had millions and millions of streams and stuff like that. People just were eating it up. I just read a story. I don't know anything about this, but there was a YouTube or a TikTok presenter or something like that was like this right-wing pundit kind of a person. It was a pretty girl, had huge popularity apparently, according to this article, and they just came out. It was I think it was somebody in India created it with AI, and then finally came out and said, yeah, that was me. Probably broke a few hearts in the process. It's kind of funny. I mean, who knows how many things that we see, especially things that are just uh, non-animated, non-video things. But even that's getting really, really good, really quickly. But things where a person posts something like on Twitter or something like that, there's no telling how many Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts and all that stuff is just AI. YouTube, I mean, I see it all over YouTube. I've messed around with one of those AI music programs just to see what it could do. I think it's called Suno, and I have a feeling that if you're just using the free version of something like that, you're not getting anything close to what it's actually capable of doing. but I had a real difficult time getting it to follow very basic instructions. That's the thing that one of the things that guy spoke about. He's like, by the time something comes along and they identify a problem and get around to creating legislature for it, it's a year old. It's obsolete at that point. I usually use AI for, I don't know, fun, entertaining kind of things. I don't really use it for anything that I find important. Like the thumbnail of this live stream, I went and created about 30 or 40 different thumbnails. I've been on this kick recently of taking a photograph of myself and implanting it into some famous piece of pop culture, literature, whatever. Like I've made two a couple of nights ago. One of them is put me in East of Eden, and one of them was put me in Cannery Row. And it was pretty cool what it came up with. Yeah, where's Waldo? Although I sat around and fiddled with it last night, I probably tried 4 or 5 times to get it to put me in the final scene of The Shining, where they show that photograph on the wall that was taken like 70 years earlier, and Jack Nicholson's in the picture. And it put me in there, but it never could get the color right. You could tell that I wasn't part of the picture. Neil, where's Waldo? Well, you think, Robert, but I don't know. The way this guy was talking, he said, he was like, it has potential very, very soon to affect a lot of people in some very negative ways. And that's kind of his point of research, is trying to prevent, or trying to figure out potential ways to prevent something catastrophic from happening. He said, but it's a very real possibility. I don't know, I could picture it doing something like, gaining the capability to actually control things with, not just having an amount of control, but literally controlling society kind of things. I'm not saying it will do this, but what I'm doing is trying to come up with a picture in my head where it's like, okay, nobody can work, or very few people can work. What's that going to do to daily life and the economy and stuff like that? I can almost picture something like Soviet Russia or something like that, where you have a very small amount of control that controls a very large amount of everything, and people are just wandering around surviving kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, if something like that got in control of infrastructure type systems, and it decided just to turn off the capabilities for people to get water, or turn off the capability of electricity, or something like that. It's hard to even imagine what that would look like. Like I say, I'm not really a doomsdayer when it comes to that. If it happens, or if it doesn't happen, there's almost nothing I can do about it. except react, which probably won't be much of anything anyway. He did say one thing I thought was interesting. He said, we've had, over the course of human history, we've had all these different inventions that furthered human capabilities and the ability to enjoy life and stuff like that. He goes, and it seems like pretty much every step forward that we take, I'm kind of paraphrasing. He didn't really say all this, but it was the thought that he implied, has led to some, depending on your perspective, some point of furtherance of good, let's say. It's easier to get food, it's easier to get around and travel, it's easier to survive, it's easier to cure illness, all those kinds of things. He goes, but those were just inventions, because this to me seems like a meta invention. And then he said, and potentially our last one. That was really interesting. I've got maybe 5 pounds, maybe, I don't know. I don't worry too much about that. It's an interesting question. What's the thing for yourself, not for your children or your family or something like that? What's the thing that you seem to worry if that fits you or not, but place a lot of your mental and physical energies in? Like, what's the thing that's most important to you as far as, I don't even know how to word the question any better than that. Relationships, yeah. See if I can figure out a way to better word it. What's the thing that kind of motivates your existence? The thing that makes you want to be here and accomplish, get it right. Is that a better way to say it? I'm having a hard time putting it into words. I don't even know if I have an answer for it. Maybe ask it this way. What's the thing, if people started taking away every little bit of your life, what's the one thing that you would hope would be the last thing they took, besides literally your life? Like, I could lose tobacco, it wouldn't bother me. I could lose music, it would bother me, but it wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I think I'll lean probably more into Charlie's answer. Stuff, I'm really not that tied to, I don't think. I'm very enamored with aspects of personal growth and that kind of thing. The ability to think, the ability to my relationships are obviously important to me. Yeah, stuff is just stuff. It's like quality of life, yeah. I guess maybe that's the question I'm answering. What is it in life that makes it quality? What even with relationships, as important and as high up on the chart I put that, things we take for granted, yeah. It's like I've had some really good relationships in my life that are not there anymore, family members that have passed away and things like that. And I've managed to survive and be just fine. That doesn't take away the importance of them or the joy that they brought me. It's interesting. This ties into two different things I've been thinking about. One of them was an article I read today on loneliness as you get older, why and how that happens and what we think about it and that kind of stuff. And in that article it talked about the things and the people that bring us joy and motivate us to do things, to go out and meet people and stuff like that. Yeah, that's good too. Yeah. Love. It's a big one. Anyway, it's talking about the reason people get lonely in their old age is even when they're just being alone doesn't mean you're going to be lonely. But this article is putting forth the idea, a big reason that people feel lonely as they get older, after they retire, after people die, things like that. Yeah, it's good stuff. The thing that causes people to feel loneliness isn't the loss of a relationship necessarily, it's the realization that that relationship had no depth. It's like a good example of this is scroll through your contact list and make note of the people that you haven't spoken to or had any contact in years. It's like I've had what I consider good friends in various employment situations, but as soon as I moved on, that connection was broken, almost without exception. It's because the circumstances of the relationship were more important to the fact that there was a relationship than the depth of the relationship was. clean them out. There's a, yeah, that ties into another thing that I was recently, that all three of these things kind of tie together. I can't speak as much to this one because I'm still in the process of processing it. Wow. I think my contact list probably has less than 100 people in it. And a bunch of those are kind of in there by default. I sent them an email or I called them at some point. I've sort of in the last, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years, 5 years for sure, been placing a lot of emphasis on pruning, kind of like what T said. It's like if there are things I come across, people, etc., if I can identify something that's where I feel like the negative outweighs the positive, I'm not interested. It's just like, it's just not worth the mental energy. And that's, people, things, whatever, ideas, ways of thinking. I think one thing that does, if you kind of pare everything back, because I mean, we have a finite amount of energy. We have a finite amount of pretty much everything that we have. And if you're spreading, if you're spreading it too thin on things that don't really matter or even cause you some sort of net negative, not only is that a problem, but it's also taking away the amount of energy you can put towards something positive. It's like inevitably, my family is my blood family, not my kids. Like the family I grew up with is about as dysfunctional and fractured as you could possibly imagine. That's good, Robert. And inevitably, when I talk to really the one member of my family, my extended family, he's close, my brother, inevitably when we talk, we end up talking about some of that dysfunctional, fractured crap. Neither one of us want to, but it's just there. And both of us have been trying to make a concerted effort not to say, have you talked to so and so? Yes, that's absolutely true, Robert. I've spoken about that before. People talking about internet influencers, and I always say we're all influencers. We just may not realize it, but somebody is always watching somebody. And quite often, the kind of people that are watching aren't waiting for you to say something profound. They're waiting for you to say something they can use, often against you. I told my brother the other day, we got off talking about one of those tangents that we were on. and I made the comment. I think I heard somebody else say it. I'm almost positive I heard somebody else say it. I said, I do not want for somebody to have to stand up at my funeral and lie. Oh, he was such a good person. I can't remember who I heard say that, but when I heard it, I was like, that's mine now. It's a good way to think about life. I mean, especially given that somebody's always watching and listening. It's like, what is it? The definition of character? It's, it's I don't know, paraphrasing some quote or something. It's how you live when nobody's looking. Given that somebody's always looking, shouldn't that implore you to do everything you can to uphold a good character? Yeah, sometimes I think it's probably for the loved ones, and sometimes I think it's for the people that are saying it. See, these cats don't have character. We had a thing this past week at church. Our pastor was celebrating, unbeknownst to him, his 30th anniversary at our church. And we kind of stole the service from him and made it about him, memories, and a bunch of people sent in videos, a bunch of visitors came, that kind of stuff. At one point, they walked around with a microphone and asked if anybody had something to say. And that first person took like 2 minutes before anybody wanted, that nobody wanted to go first. Yeah. The guy even said, don't make me just hand this to somebody. But when people started talking, I noticed an odd theme starting to develop, and it was how those people, almost everybody that stood up and talked, it was how they found that church, instead of how grateful I am to have known you for however long I've known you, Pastor, kind of thing. Not everybody, but that was a very common theme. And I was sitting there, and maybe 15 or 20 people had spoken, and I was sitting there trying to work up the nerve. I kind of knew what I wanted to say, but like right as I was about to stand up, my son stood up. He said something. I thought, well, I can't stand up right after him. So I waited a couple of more people, and then several people walked down front where Pastor was sitting. But they were talking to the people in the church. They were like speaking, like a speaking engagement kind of thing. Some of them wouldn't even look at him, which was weird to me. But I think that was a nervousness more than anything else. Well, I finally got up, and the guy with the microphone was on the other side. And instead of making him bring the thing over, I pointed to the front and just started walking down there. He met me down there with a microphone. And I don't even know if the people could hear me or not, but I was just talking to a pastor and his wife that were sitting right there in front of me. And I said what I had to say, and barely made it through it, man. I told him before I started, I said, "You watch, I'm going to be the one that breaks down crying." What was the point of telling that story? I'll tell you one of the things I said to that. I said, I want y'all to pay attention or take note of everybody that's spoken here, the genuineness, the emotion, the caring that they've expressed. I said, take note of that because that's real. That's, that doesn't exist in a vacuum. They couldn't have just said that to anybody that was sitting there. There was a relationship that was built over these years. And you're a huge part of that. You're a huge part of this church kind of thing. But it was really interesting. They were just sitting there just rapt, looking at me, nodding, It's just like acknowledging some of the stuff I said. I talked for longer than I intended to, but I didn't talk that long at all. Maybe a minute and a half. It was really interesting. It was a good time. He sent out an email expressing his thanks. I guess the reason I told that story was it's like, live a life and be a part of people's lives and develop relationships and things that I've said this to people in the past, and I've only said it to a few people that it was deeply meant when I said it. It's like, knowing you has made me a better person. That's a big thing to tell somebody. And that's kind of the impression I wanted to leave with Pastor. It's like there's a lot of people that can say that about you. If we're lucky in our life, maybe 3 or 4 people could say something like that and mean it. Nah, you can try to fool yourself with that, Charlie. I appreciate that, Robert. I used to think it was a hard thing to put myself in front of anybody, stand up and speak or anything like that. And it was real difficult for me to do that. And at some point it clicked with me. It's like, this isn't really about my comfort or recognition or anything like that. It's never been comfortable for me to do that. It's like that thing. I want people to know when they see me that they're seeing me instead of some altered representation of me that's supposed to make me look better than I am. I gave Marcy a little thing before we were I may have given it to her at one of our anniversaries. Let me try to remember what that thing said, and I'll respond to that. It was, I made a little framed thing with calligraphy on a little piece of paper. It said, "You believing me to be a better person than I am has made me a better person than I was." They got emotional. I mean, I don't know who you spoke to or anything about them, but people understand uh, genuineness and realness. And when somebody of character, which I consider you to be, T, says something like that to somebody, it means something. It's not just something you say. It's something that you can't not say quite often. I'm glad you found your way in, Robert. Go snag you a couple of more pounds before bed. You never know. That's another thing. When you ever, if you ever get something in your head that you feel fits that kind of bill, like this needs to be said, not just because you have a desire for it to be said or something like that, but it's like it, it's almost like the world or the universe or whatever it is has some sort of void in it that this needs to fill. I don't know if I said that the way I wanted to, but you know those kind of things that exist. It's like when you come up with something, when you find something like that, don't fight it. I think things like that can be like a like two sides of a coin. They can have some sort of a healing effect for somebody that hears it, but if you keep something like that to yourself, it can almost have like some sort of cancerous effect. It's something to think about. I think sometimes we find words or thoughts or something like that in ourselves that kind of fit that bill, but maybe our understanding of them leans more towards, I need to get this out. I need to get rid of it instead of giving it. And that's a motivational thing that I heard John Vervaeke say one time. He tries to do the right thing at the right time in the right measure for the right reason. And I think that for the right reason aspect of that kind of carries more weight than the rest of them. Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, intent's definitely important. I think some people, many people, misunderstand intent too, or they haven't misaligned whatever the thing that has to be aligned correctly is. Like there's people that say, well, I'm going to tell them the truth even if it kills them. They may need to know that truth, but they may not hear it coming from somebody like that or in that manner. I used to be one of those people. I used to say the truth hurts for a reason, or the truth hurts when it needs to. I'm starting to hear a lot of these people that I listen to, these people that do these long form interviews and stuff like that on philosophical, psychological kind of topics. Yeah, I believe that too, Charlie. I'm starting to hear a lot of these people when pressed on something like, well, what is it all about kind of thing, or what do we need to do kind of thing, in relation to all this scientific stuff you just said. What's the takeaway? I'm hearing a lot of these people use the word love and kindness. Much more so than they did just a few years ago. I can remember the way this one guy said it. He's very philosophical, very stoic, matter of fact kind of person. I can't remember his name or even his channel name. Yeah, I believe that's obviously true, but I believe it's becoming more and more evident in more and more people. It's like, but that kind of goes back to what I'm trying to remember this guy said. And it was something along the lines of, there's nothing productive that you can do in anger that you can't also accomplish with kindness. Something like that. And he had 3 or 4 people push back on him, and he kept answering. He kept just saying, prove that wrong. You may not put all your eggs in that basket, but prove it wrong. And he may have said it in a different way it may be easier to disprove what I just said, but that was kind of the thought behind it. I'll be honest, I got a long way to go on that front. I often catch myself saying things that could be better said in a different way. Or not said at all. We had, after that service at church, we had a big potluck, kind of was catered, but you just kind of randomly sit with people in those things. You don't necessarily know who you're going to be sitting and talking to. And I have a hard time in that situation where there's more than 3 or 4 people, or especially where there's more than 3 or 4 conversations going. I have a hard time hearing anything. I hear everything, but I don't take anything in. Yeah, Bambi. There was more wisdom in that than people give credit to. But anyway, I was sitting at a table with these former members of our church. One of them's name is Roger Howe. And I'd known him peripherally while he was in our church for, this has been 7 years ago when they left. I love stuff like this, Charlie. But after we got finished eating and went our separate ways, we were talking about trying to remember something. I don't remember something about those people. And for the first time, I understood that he used to be a professor at Stanford. I was like, man, I would have loved to have had a conversation with him. I never did in all those years. They were probably only here for maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. Our paths just never really crossed back then, and I couldn't hear a word that was being said when we were eating. We've had a few people like that in our church over the years. It's in a very affluent part of town, and most of the people that go there fit that bill. Not all of us, but you would never know it from the interactions. You don't feel like there's any kind of a class divide or anything. Yeah, I miss these kind of conversations. It's kind of, sometimes I complain or lament. I don't think I complain necessarily, that I miss the days when my lives had 20, 30, 40 people in them sometimes. They were lively. Now I find myself talking with 2 or 3 people maximum usually. But I think if I really sat back and thought about it, I prefer this. I don't really have to think about it too much at all. These kind of things, kind of conversations rarely happen when there's more than 4 or 5 people. That didn't do a whole lot for that cat's constitution. Mine as well. All right, Charlie, you take care. I think I'm about finished with this pipe. I'm not a big fan of those kind of cars. Freshly washed humans. Hard, yeah. Maybe your attention was supposed to be placed on those kind of things. I get frustrated sometimes sitting in church because inevitably, no matter where we sit, the person with the two crying babies sits behind us. And my whole hearing thing, I just can't hear stuff when I'm distracted like that. I have to really, really focus and pay attention on not getting upset by that. It's good you got to spend some time like that with your mom, though. I'm sure she appreciated it. Well, I don't know that she appreciated it any more than I know anything else about her, but I can imagine she appreciated it. I can hear her talking to her friends. I took T to church, and he was all walking around sniffing people. That's good. I think I'll realize myself another pipe, whether anybody's in here or not. I get a fair amount of relaxation out of working those Sudoku puzzles. Sudoku, I always say it wrong. Probably much like quite a few people in church, though. Anyway, I sit there and work those little puzzles out. I've gotten pretty decent at, I can solve them just about all, except for some of those super extreme ones that they put out or whatever. But I walked in my son's bedroom last week, or this week, and he was watching some guy play that game on the computer, some English guy, and it was very, very low key video. Like the guy wasn't saying much, and when he did, it was like, well, no, that can't be the case because of this number here and blah blah blah. And I got interested in that, and I started watching that guy's channel, and he's like a world champion puzzle solver kind of person. But his channel is fairly fascinating. That dude is so incredibly intelligent. Somebody else popped in. Say hello. Exy burnout. Yeah, I had no idea there were such channels out there. I went on there to try to pick up some tips and ended up just enjoying watching his process. Generally speaking, though, I'm not much of a fan of watching people play video games online. That's a strange world. I can watch people play chess. I tend to pick up things from that and enjoy that process. But other than that, there's not really anything like that that I pay attention to. All right, T. Yeah, I enjoyed it, man. It's the first live stream I've done like this in a little while, where there was really good back and forth. What's happening in your world, Burnout? I had one of those really interesting experiences the other day. I work and turned on the computer. What happened in Washington? A lot of rain. I guess, I don't know. Several years ago, somebody sent me a little challenge coin thing. It had several Latin phrases on it and stuff like that. And I thought, this is pretty cool. And I kept that thing in my pocket for a long time. It was just one of the things that I carried around. And then one day I noticed it was gone. I was like, what happened to it? And I've thought about it multiple times over the last few years, and even looked for it a couple of times. And then like last week sometime, I noticed just randomly sitting on our bed was the little plastic sheath that it came in. I was like, well, that's interesting. Just kind of appeared out of nowhere, and nobody really knew why. I thought, well, surely I'm going to find that soon if that happened. And then like 3 or 4 days later, I noticed it was just sitting on a bookshelf. Check to see if you had any more. But yeah, it's just all of a sudden there it was. I forgot who I was talking to. I confused this screen name with another person. Kind of odd that I would be telling the story, huh? Anyway, there it was, and I was like, I've been looking for this, which is a very unusual phrase to hear in our house because it's usually not me that says it. I'm like, really? You've been looking for this? It's been missing for 14 years? Anyway, my wife said, I found that in one of my shoes. I'm like, I don't have any idea the path that it took from the time I lost it till this week. But there it was, in its little carry bag, still in the little plastic case it came in, perfect condition. So I've been pretty pleased about that. It probably, as far as my life inside the house, it probably hadn't been 10 feet from me for 5 years. I just didn't know it. Sometimes I wonder about things like that. There was a song by Guy Clark years ago called Indian Head Penny, I think it was, and it was basically the life cycle of this penny, the people that had seen it and stuff like that. Probably about 15 or 18 years ago, something like that, I pulled an 1864 penny out of circulation at a restaurant I was working at. I've sat and thought sometimes, it's like this thing, and it was so worn out, it took me forever to determine that it was an 1864, but I finally was able to definitively be able to say that. But I've thought, the places this thing's been and the people that have held it, the story behind that would just fascinate me. I've managed to do that 2 or 3 times. I pulled a 1906 nickel and a I want to say 16 dime out of circulation. Wow. Yeah, those are the oldest ones that I have. That same restaurant, though, I pulled two $20 bills out of circulation. One of them's a 1950 and one of them's a 1960. I'm like, that is almost unheard of. Those things, the life cycle of $20 bills is like a year and a half. And that thing managed to survive 60 plus years before I got a hold of it. I've also got two $2 silver certificates that I pulled out of circulation years ago, back in the early 90s. I was managing a pizza restaurant, and a delivery driver came in one night. Somebody had paid $8 for a pizza with four of those. I thought somebody's dad's gonna be pissed. But he goes, do we accept these? Are these real? Or, something like that. I was like, oh yeah, those are real. Let me see. And he realized by my excitement that they were something that he might want to hang on to. I convinced him to sell me two of them. I never was. I used to save silver. If I found something that was, like pre-64 or something like that, I would save it. I would save any penny that was wheat penny or older. Or anything else that I found that I thought was, I don't know, worth anything or significant for any reason. But I always collected foreign money. I don't know how I got started doing that, but I don't have a collection, I would say. I probably got 70 or 80 world coins from probably, I don't know, maybe 40 countries or something like that. Pocket, yeah. It just amazes me that things like that survive. Coins I can see, bills not so much. Especially, I mean, anything over a $10 denomination, the lifespan of those is like, I think a $20 bill is 18 months. I'm not sure beyond that, but I've had people that work for me at restaurants, though. I always got a kick out of this. This would have been in mid 2000s, 2005, something like that. Well, 2008, 2010 maybe. Anyway, somebody would pay for something with a 20 that was like 15 years old, 20 years old or something like that. The old classic 20s. They would be like, is this real? Because it didn't look, it didn't have all the stamping and marking and all the stuff that the current ones do. I'm like, yeah, that's real. I remember hearing some comedian one time, he said, what is it with foreign money? A lot of their foreign currency, it looks like the warranty from a coffee machine or something like that. I said, I don't know where that got started, but I believe I just remembered at some point when I was a kid, probably less than 10 years old, I don't know. My mother gave me two Australian pennies from 1943, the year she was born. They're they're about as big as our silver dollars used to be. Big kangaroo on one side of them. I think King George is on the other side. And at some point, right around that same time, my stepfather took a business trip to Italy, and he came back with a bunch of money. Not a bunch, but various money, and I got that. I had like, I don't remember what there was one piece of paper currency and several coins. I don't remember what it was. But at one point in my late teens, I got hard up for some cash, and I thought, I'm gonna sell these or find out how much they're worth, because it was like, you know, 10,000 lira note or something like that. I remember I called the library and got them to do the conversion of it. It was like $1.83. But I still have that bill. Some Italian, I don't know what the word for Italian lady is. Fräulein. It's German. Put her lipstick prints on it. Phone tokens, yeah. I've had a few bus tokens from subway systems around the world. A lot of those look amazingly like some of our change. I should go through mine sometime and look at them again. It's been quite a few years. I've got one coin. I don't remember where it's from. It's a seven-sided, which is unusual. It's the only one I've ever seen. It used to be fun trying to figure out where they were from and that sort of thing. You don't have to think about it anymore. Point your camera at it and it's like, here it is. I got this new phone. I was trying to get the guy to tell me, it's like, show me what some of the things it can do, the features that I might not be aware of. And he started showing me all the AI capabilities, which I was not interested in. I was like, that's what AI can do. I'm interested in what I can do with this phone. But one of the things he showed me was there's a feature in it where you can point your camera at whatever, and this AI voice will tell you what you're looking at. Me and my son were looking at something in my room with my zoom in on my camera one day, and somehow I activated that feature. And it was like, it's no wonder people drive off bridges and stuff like this paying attention to what their phone says. Pointed at something that would be like, you know, person, goat, person, goat. It's like, what are you? I've been using matches to light my pipe quite often. And I started noticing something about matches recently. They're almost like fingerprints or snowflakes or something. They never are the same. I started taking photographs of some of the more interesting looking outcomes after a match had burned. Some of them are fascinating. It's like, how in the world did it do that? I had one recently that after it burned a little bit, the head fell off of it. I laid it down and zoomed in on it, and at the point where the head fell off, couldn't quite figure out what it was I was looking at, but there were like these, the stick itself was a certain thickness and the head is the certain thickness. There were like these tendrils that kind of came out of the stick and were holding this, what was the head, and they were very, almost like silk fibers. And I thought, that's weird, because the stick is the stick. It's not like a ring setting that's holding that thing. It's just something that's been dipped in something. But the way that it fell off, the residue that it was left was pretty cool. Like, that's unusual. These are the things that occupy my time. I'm not a smart man. I haven't even heard about it. That's the first I've heard about it. Was it like a civilian thing, or did it happen in kind of a military setting, or? No, I haven't heard that. That's what, three for sure attempts. Hmm. You know where it happened? Respondents dinner. Wow. You would think a high security type environment. You would think everywhere it goes would be that, but I read something not too terribly long ago. I may have my facts wrong, but I believe it said for the rush the bar. Yeah, you probably won't either. I believe it said every president since Kennedy has had a very notable attempt. I don't remember I'd have to go back and read that, uh, whatever it was that I read. I have to find it first. I don't remember where I ran across it. I was thinking the same thing for Carter. But it listed a number of instances for quite a few of them. Some of them may have been something like, the golf course with Trump, where there was no necessarily imminent attempt kind of thing, but I don't remember that. I don't remember being too terribly knowledgeable or interested in politics very much at all until probably the 90s. Yeah, I have to look that up. Rosalind. If I remember correctly, former presidents and their families have Secret Service protection for life, if I remember that right. I don't know to what extent their families do, but I saw recently where Chelsea Clinton ran like the Boston or New York Marathon or something like that. How do you possibly expect to be able to run security on something like that? Seems to me you'd have to have a couple of people that were able to run a marathon along with them, but do now. I wonder when that started. As I know, a lot of procedures started to take shape after JFK. They instituted a lot after that. But then when that guy Hinckley tried it on Reagan, it almost seemed like they had forgotten a lot. Or, that one has always amazed me. That Secret Service agent that pushed Reagan into the car and jumped in on top of him, I can't remember his name. I got interested in something several years ago and found myself reading about him and that event. He was a genuinely good dude. He died like, I don't know, in the last 6 or 8 years, I don't remember. I feel like I hear raindrops falling, but I don't see any evidence of it. I was talking about books or something the other night. I got around to talking about Vietnamese POW memoirs. I'd read, I think, 4 or 5 of those guys, Denton and all those other guys, and I was trying to remember um, Stockdale's name and could not remember it to save my life. Somebody finally looked it up. I'm currently reading or listening to the audiobook Middlemarch. Pretty good. It was written by George Eliot, which is a pen name for a lady whose name I don't recall. She wrote under a man's name because of credibility issues. I remember reading like a description or something of the book, or a recommendation that somebody made or something, saying like the female writers of that time were writing books like Jane Eyre and different things, romantic kind of literature, had a flowery kind of aspect to it. And they described this person as the first psychological female writer, something like that. I find that to be the case. She really gets into, really makes you think. Yeah, I find myself digging fairly deep trying to find a new book to read. When I finish one, it's like there's a lot of sameness to the kind of stuff that's being put out now, unless it's some kind of technical book or something like that. I heard somebody talking about aesthetics the other day, and they said, go look at a bookstore or online Amazon books or something like that. All the covers look the same. I can't remember what I read right before this one. I think it was I can't remember what it was exactly. It was something about I read two World War One type books recently. One of them was The Guns of August, which is a really good read. One of them kind of followed the humanness of war. I can't remember what the title of that book was, but it focused on three, maybe four particular wars from like the Peloponnesian up to World War One. I think was where you left off. Maybe World War Two. David Goggins. V.D. Hansen, possibly. That might have been it. I've read three in a similar vein, and I'm horrible at remembering authors' names or book titles. I know his dealt. I can't remember the exact war, but it was sometime back in the like a early history, Peloponnesian War, or and I think he did something with maybe one of the Greek era wars, and then he did like one of the battles that led up to Waterloo. Maybe even it didn't include Waterloo, but it was in that Napoleonic thing, and then one modern one. read another one. I can't remember this author's name or the title either. It does almost no good to talk about them, but it was kind of a historiography type book. It was basically the history of how we tell history, and that one was really good. He started out with Thucydides and went all the way up to modern era TV kind of stuff. Can't remember his name. He's a Jewish author, English Jewish. Yeah, that wasn't the title of it. It was something like um, it had war, I believe, in the title, but it very much dealt with uh, not in a graphic necessarily way, but kind of the horrors of war, what the people experienced, the types of weapon, the types of battles that they were engaged in, how it affected people, that kind of thing. But it wasn't really, this guy experienced this guy experienced that. It was more of a totality kind of a thing. It was pretty good. Another one recently that I read, it was just really well written, but very difficult to listen to some of the stuff that was in it, was The Executioner's Song by Norman Mailer, story of Gary Gilmore. That one had some very bizarre moments in it. That guy never had a chance. I'm not defending him in any way, but I hear Marcy practicing her piano in there. I think I'm gonna hop off here. I never know when I say I'm going to hop off, when to hop off, because I'm always thinking somebody's typing something. All right, the crazy rabbit attack. Yeah, I'll remember that when I go in. That's pretty funny. I'll look that and the shooting up for sure. But until next time, you take care of yourself. Again, thanks for that coin. That thing means more to me than probably you would think. But anyway, I'm glad I found it. I'll talk to you later.